These have been challenging times, but the body of Christ has proven itself resilient. We've gathered in different ways, in different places, yet stood steadfast as the church. We have found peace in God's promise to never leave us or forsake us. In our separation, we have remained united. In our struggle, we have lived out our faith. In the midst of the unknown, we have leaned on the strength of an all-knowing God. Throughout history, the church has thrived in adversity, and this moment is no different. The power of God is unstoppable, His love unending, His grace unrelenting, His glory undeniable. Today, no matter where we gather, we remain God's people. Our mission has not changed. Our calling has not been altered. And nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever change that. We are the church, and today we stand resilient.
Good morning. Good morning. What a delight to see you today. My name is Pastor Michael, and I serve as the lead pastor for our two campuses, where we have one ministry in two locations. Feels like it's getting a little hazy in here to me, huh? I had no idea, Rita, you were going to be here today.
Neither did I.
This is a shock, and you're friends with us too. Excellent.
I was just driving around the neighborhood.
When someone shows up 20 minutes early to church, they become the speaker that day. So
is that right?
That's how it works. It's excellent. There's a Bible verse that I'd like to share with you, and it's from the Psalms, and it goes like this. In fact, why don't we read it together? Give thanks to the Lord and proclaim His greatness. Let the whole world know what He has done. Sing to Him. Yes, sing His praise. Tell everyone about His wonderful deeds. In the liturgical tradition that I grew up in, there was this beautiful canticle. It's a song, and it goes like this. Thank the Lord and sing His praise. Tell everyone what He has done. It's a tradition that normally we have a paid evangelist do that. That's not the original intent of God in His Word. God's original intent in His Word was that all of us who have experienced God's grace and forgiveness would do these things. Thank the Lord, sing His praise, and then tell everyone what He has done. The good news of God's love for us, that Jesus, who knew no sin, became our sin for us, is something that God invites each one of us to receive, to give thanks to God, and to share with other people. Thanks, praise, and tell. Those are the three words. Rita, I am thankful that you, not only with your life, show thanks to God. I not only give thanks to God that with your life you sing a song of praise to God. Your life is a song of the goodness of God. And this morning, to our friends and family and guests here and those online, you're going to get to tell what God has done in your journey. Remember, I told you there would be a sign, a cue,
yes,
that it's your time? Okay, now it's your... That's it. Okay, good. I'm so glad we worked that out.
Well, we did. And just going back to what you just said, all I heard was, I'm not getting paid for this. That's all I heard.
That's what we call ministry. Yeah.
Well then, it's great to be here. And thank you for inviting me. And as I was mulling over the last few weeks, how to start this, I thought, why don't we start with the day we met? And the day we met, was a year and a half ago, to be exact, March 6th, 2017. And I am a preschool teacher at a local Lutheran school. And I attended my second Nurturing the Faith. And it's just what it says. We, as educators and as church staff, take the day off, and we come together, and to give back to our families, we pause and nurture our own faith. And so I went in and sat down, and the person who was introducing the speaker that day said that the speaker who was supposed to be there could not make it. And I think they booked these things probably about a year in advance. I mean, this is a pretty big deal, a lot of people. And they could not fulfill something happened in their life, and so they could not. And so he said, I sent out a frantic email and and Pastor Michael and his wife Bernadine agreed and fulfilled.
When people are desperate, they'll take anyone. That's what I live for.
Yep, that's why I'm here today.
That was quite a turning point that day for you. Tell me more.
It was, and so I sat there, and as you talked, you hit on some very, the morning you talked about our families we grew up in, how that shapes us as a child and how we can bring those things into adulthood. And you talked, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about the our self and our shadow self. And what I remember is that our self is who we present to everybody else. And our shadow self is the one that we kind of keep in the shadow and we don't want everybody to see. And so as the day went on, I felt something very deep in me happening, and I started to get very teary in the afternoon. And the self I was presenting was the preschool teacher. That's why I was there that day. A wife. I, at that point, was married to my husband 21 years. A mom of, at that time, a 12 and a 14-year-old. A church member, very involved. Church member, I'll step in and do anything. Fall festival, whatever, children's ministry. I was that person, and that's who I was presenting. And people used to say to me all the time, "Hey, Rita, how are you today?" And I would say, "Living the dream, living the dream." And that's who I was presenting. But as you and Bernadine in the afternoon started opening up some very, you showed a lot of transparency. With and I connected with you especially on similar things that happened growing up, and it was wrecking me. God was undoing me. He was undoing me, and so I started crying quietly at my table, trying not to let all those other people see me crying. And then you hit on some other issues that really undid me. So I introduced myself briefly afterward and said, "Wow, what you had to say was very important to me, and thank you very much. And I really relate to a lot of these family wounds. And you don't just become 20, 30, or 40 and you're done with them. And there are patterns that you carry into adulthood. And some are okay, but some are very unhealthy."
I believe that every one of us here can relate to the person that we want to present versus the reality of the person that we are. And that the Christian church is a community of people who all need the same thing, the grace and forgiveness of Jesus. It's not I can pretend to be better than you are, or I can pretend to be better than I am. It's the reality that we need one another, and we all need the same thing, and that's the grace of Jesus. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So after that day...
I went home. I got in my minivan because, again, I was living the dream, so I had the minivan because I was coaching my daughter in softball, that's the other thing I left out. I was coaching. Barb is here. We coached basketball together that same year. Like I said, pillar of the community right here. And I went home and I cried. I got in my minivan and I cried. I cried all the way home. I cried all evening. And then I emailed you. And
I've had that impact on women my whole life. Yeah.
Why am I not getting paid? So I brought the email, and I'll just read you parts of it. Hello, Pastor Michael. I was blessed to have attended the Nurturing the Faith conference today at Bethlehem. I introduced myself at the end. My story is similar to yours. I told you that I am the youngest of 11 children. I am the peacemaker, the rescuer, and at 50 years old still feel as though I am a little kid who deserves a beatdown from my siblings. I also told you that in our family of 11 children, 6 have struggled with alcohol addiction. What I didn't tell you is that I am one of the 6. I just started going to Celebrate Recovery. I am tired of hiding, but boy, is it hard to give up the alcohol. I immediately felt a connection with you and Bernadine this morning. This is only my second Nurturing the Faith conference, and I know that the Lord put me there for a reason. Today, either you or Bernadine said that when you numb the pain, you also numb the joy. Boy, did that hit home. I think about that often as I become numb from alcohol. And then I put, and I'm just going to set up now that it's out there, I'm not perfect. I was sitting at my kitchen counter. All my family were upstairs in bed. It was late at night, and like every other night, I was drinking very heavily. And I had a big bottle of wine there, and I'm at my laptop composing this email. And I very distinctly remember going, I am about to push send. And I was writing this in the email to you, and I am thinking twice, ... Okay, ... Here it goes with the transparency. And that was a word you used a lot that day. ... I am so broken. So I am going to push send now. Blessings, Rita Feldman.
Living the dream.
And I just, as I mulled over how to approach this day, I've kept that email, obviously, for all these years.
So the Apostle Paul tells this story in the New Testament about what he was, what God has done, and now who he is as a new creation. That God has this way of revealing to us our fallenness, our brokenness, our sinfulness. And then God says, now let me tell you what I've done with that. As you began to own the reality of your brokenness, what were the things that were most challenging for you? And then what were the things that brought you joy?
I am an alcoholic. So I drink because I really like the effects of alcohol. And I like the buzz. But over the years, as the pressures of life and parenting especially got to me, it became an escape. So when I no longer had that escape, it was hard. And when things were hard, I did not have that anymore.
So you saw a transformation of your nature, of your dependency upon numbing reality.
Yep.
Because reality can be painful, but unreality kills. That you came from that place of realizing this is literally killing me to a place of I need hope in life. How did the hope in life component come together?
Well, I brought one more email, and you and I started an email string, and I texted you 3 months after. I emailed you 3 months later, and you and I had met. You met with my husband and I, and you started encouraging me to go to AA. And I said, no, they're a bunch of alcoholics. Can't hang out with them.
That was 5 no's in a row. I'm just counting. Keep going.
You're right. And, why would I hang out with a bunch of alcoholics? And so I was really resisting God and what he wanted for me, and I was going to do it my way. And why I thought that would work, but I finally gave in, and I'll just read this email.
I've deleted every email you've ever sent me, so I just wanted to throw that in.
Well, most people do. Dear Pastor Eckelkamp, I have attached a photo to share with you. I received this chip last Sunday, and it was a 3-month sobriety chip. The day that you and Bernadine agreed to share at the Nurturing the Faith conference is the day the Lord used to orchestrate a very necessary change in the life of myself and my family. I reached out to you in March, but continued to drink until July 3rd. I was becoming suicidal. Then the Lord used a sermon to touch my heart in a powerful way. Through AA and Celebrate Recovery, I attend daily meetings. I love both these fellowships. It took years to foster my alcoholic patterns. Therefore, I know it will take years of hard work to maintain my sobriety. Pastor Michael, I want you to know how important you are to me, my husband, Tim, and my children. I am praying that in 3 months I will be sending a photo with my 6-month chip. I intend to work hard with the Lord and with the programs to assure that I do this. Blessings, Rita.
Blessings, Rita. So when I hear somebody who gets their 90-day chip, I think of 90 miracles in a row, as it's one day at a time, living in the power of God's grace, living in the power of what God is doing rather than what we're doing. I love this quote: sobriety means doing it God's way rather than our way. It's not knuckle down and get yourself through it. It's depending on a power greater than ourselves to rescue us from the insanity of our thinking. Now, that's not just for alcoholism. That's for every one of our realities. That we need a power greater than ourselves to rescue us from our way of thinking. You referenced Celebrate Recovery. Would you tell us what that is?
Yes, it is a Christian-based 12-step program. And, that's what I was first open to. I didn't want to go in and to AA and have just a higher power. I wanted to claim Christ as my higher power. So it's Christian-based. It starts with the time of worship like this. And then we go through the 12 steps, and it's more intensive, the 12-step work, or in a different way, I guess. And it is, like I said, there's scripture paired along with each step. And so the 12 steps is not 12 steps in order to get God to love you. The 12 steps is not a plan by which you can somehow convince God that he ought to come alongside of you. The 12 steps, which has its foundation in the Christian faith, from the authors and from its foundation, the 12 steps are the reminder that in light of a God who loves the world and who loves you, that he is a God who gives hope, and he is a God who gives life, and he gives it in abundance. The reason the term higher power is used was because of the understanding that in a room full of people dealing with addiction, there's a lot of people who have given up faith and given up hope and are giving up life. And so using the term higher power isn't a slap in the face of Christianity. It's simply meeting people right where they are
with the understanding that God is going to bring them to where they need to be. I was at a AA meeting pre-COVID, although we have a couple now that have started to meet in person, socially distanced and so forth, where on that day it was a birthday meeting, and someone had received their 40-year chip. 40. 40. And the room went like this. It was almost a golf clap. And then at the very end, giving out the chips, the woman held up a coin and she said, "Is there anyone here today who has a desire to stop drinking?" And there was an awkward pause in the room. And 2 people stood up and came forward for their chip. And the room exploded in applause because they were watching a miracle unfold. The desire to say no to death and yes to life. What did that saying yes to life look like for you, Rita?
Well, God is obviously amazing. And I alluded to the fact that growing up in youngest of 11 children, my father was alcoholic, and he had 38 years sobriety when he died in 1997. But he was a rough guy, and he was pretty no-nonsense. And I got the sober dad growing up. I grew up with the sober dad, so I was better off than my older siblings. But as you know, a cycle of abuse can forward, and certainly it was a challenging home to grow up in. And I carried a lot of anger and a lot of depression. And I remember from a very young age knowing the word suicide, very young age, because that was talked about a lot in our home with my older siblings as they dealt with things. And so the amazing part of God is that I would have never dealt with those things. And I always had anger. Before I drank, I always had anger. And I didn't have tools. And especially when I had children and I didn't know what to do, I would just explode. And that's before I drank. And getting so low and scaring myself so much because I became so suicidal that I finally gave AA a try. And then God just started, I just this week started thinking, wow, I got a 3-for-1 deal.
A 3-for-1 deal. Tell me more.
Sobriety, but my anger, I approach parenting so differently. I approach everything. If I open the refrigerator and the ranch dressing spills all over, I used to just get uncorked, and my kids would go, because that would just make me, I was always on the edge.
It was enough to make you want to buy the ranch, yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, that was funny, yeah.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. So, I have, the 12 steps have not been about my dealing with alcohol. It's been about dealing with my anger and my depression. I've always had depression. I'm known as the funny, fun, do. And my entire life, I've really fixated on death and getting out. And I would fantasize a lot about how I would die. And there was a time in high school that I was very suicidal, but I never shared it with anybody. And so, but that's God's miracle, is that this last year, so I've been sober 3.5 years, this last year has been the happiest I've ever been in my life. In my life. And I'm talking since I was a tiny kid and I have my first memories.
So help us understand, what does that happiness look like?
What that looks like, life continues. I'm not, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm still parenting. By the grace of God, I'm still parenting. I didn't make bad enough decisions in my drinking to lose my children. My husband and I just celebrated 24 years
Yay.
of marriage. And
1 second. Could you start that applause again? Can we do that again? Yeah.
And that applause is for my husband. I mean, it is, and I don't mean that
We're
funny.
well aware, yeah.
It's been a lot, but I just approach it differently. Mm-hmm. I just have a peace and a serenity that I never had before. And slowly, my daughter, who's a talker, Janelle knows that, would say to me, "Mom, you spilled the ranch and you didn't come uncorked." And then she would say, "Mom, you used to be sad all the time. Mm-hmm. You're so much happier." She would say those things. And years ago, we took our son, we were doing some family counseling. And the therapist said to him, "Describe your mom." Oh, this one's hard. And he said, "She's either sad or mad." Yeah. And I think he was probably 4th or 5th grade.
Wow.
When he said that. Mm-hmm. And that's how he viewed me. Mm-hmm. But I would put on that mask.
Living the dream.
And I've got friends here from Bethlehem, and they will tell you that's not how I presented myself at Bethlehem. Mm-hmm. That is not. Yeah. And that was a hard reality. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today.
As we now begin to come to a close today, what's a word of advice as a Christian sister speaking into someone else's life who's struggling with their hidden self? What's some words of encouragement that you have for them?
One of the reasons I resisted AA, and there were many, is I knew that they started by, you have to start every meeting with, "Hi, I'm Rita and I'm an alcoholic." Mm-hmm. And I was all mad and said, "I'm not going to define myself. That doesn't define me. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm this, I'm that." But 3.5 years later, I have found so much freedom in that. Mm-hmm. So honesty with myself and voicing it to somebody else, because some of the people I was hiding it from the most are sitting in this room. Yeah. And guess what? They're sitting here. None of them have turned their back on me. And they know who I am. They know the real me. Mm-hmm. So I voiced it to others. I asked for help. But the most important thing is I surrendered to God. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you what that looked like. And it was probably about a 1.5 year process. And so many miracles happened along the way. But it was that complete, I was literally prostrate on my floor. And
you ran out of you.
I ran out of me. So as I was prostrate on my carpet, my first thought was, "My God, I've got to vacuum." That was my first thought. I have not vacuumed in a while. My second, and I surrendered. I was flat and crying, and I haven't drank since.
Thanks be to God.
But I've worked hard. I have worked hard.
Mm-hmm. So, like you, perhaps. I grew up in a church tradition where you really had to appear like you had your stuff together, instead of being a community where none of us have our stuff together except by the grace and the forgiveness of God. We are a community that believes this reality. At appropriate times and in appropriate places, we can share not only the self that we want to present to the world, but we can also present that self that we think we're the only one, because that's the lie of the evil one, that we're the only ones who are feeling this or experiencing this. But the truth is, we gather around grace, we gather around forgiveness, and we gather in the name of God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit,
Amen.
who is a God who not only gives life, but he gives it abundantly. Can we say thank you to Rita today? Thanks for being here today.